Thank you very much. How do we do that? Okay, okay, we're going to. We have a lot of material to cover today. We're welcome to all the new people. We'll say hello to everybody, to the old friends and the new friends. We'll say hello to everyone after Keter Shem. Okay. We have, this is longer than usual piece from the Baal Shem Tov, and so we don't want to waste any time. So let's start. We're going to start with a story, end with a story. The story, and I think the story, both stories connect to the content of what we're going to study today. And the Baal had really, somebody's not muted. No offense, but we can hear like you're ironing your clothes or something. Everybody mute, please.
Vincent is.
Okay, got it. But of course, anybody wants to ask a question, you're always welcome to ask a question anytime. Okay, so for those people who are not, and we're not going to go into who the Baal Shem Tov was. He was the founder of the Chassidic movement. He himself was an incredible mystic and Kabbalist. The one of the earliest pieces of his writings is about Aliyat Neshama, that is actually on Rosh Hashanah 350 years ago. His soul left his body and he went to heaven, and he saw all types of secrets. He saw people doing tikkun, repairing the damage they did, their spiritual damage in the world to come. He saw people being rewarded for the positive things they did, and he gets finally after aliyah achar aliyah, after elevation, he gets to the chamber of the Messiah, and the Messiah. He gets to the Hechel of Messiah, and he says to the Messiah, Masai Ka'asimar, when will you come? And but just, if anybody, who's not muted, just 1 second.
Just muted everybody.
You muted Shaul as well.
Now you're muted, yeah. No, you have to unmute yourself.
He got to the chamber. Mashiach went level after level. This is what the first class that we had was this letter that he wrote to his brother-in-law, Gershom from Kitov. And he gets finally, after seeing so many miraculous things, he gets to the chamber of the Messiah, and he says to the Messiah, Mosai Kasi Mar, when will you come? When will the master come? And his answer was, when your well springs spread forth, when your well springs will be affecting the world, that's when Mashiach will come. And that's such an amazing thing, because it's niyut techilasim b'soifen. The end is tucked into the beginning, and the beginning is tucked into the end, because we say that the times of Mashiach, when Mashiach will come, what will be the generator that will bring all the miraculous events of Mashiach, when the lamb and the lion will lie together, when people will turn their swords into plowshares, when there will be peace in the world. It says, Mole das Hashem kamayim liyam achasim. The world will be filled with knowledge of God, like water fills the sea. Every crevice will be filled with divine consciousness. When will that? How will that happen? It will happen exactly but the way that the Baal Shem Tov said, that the Mashiach said, through the revelations of the Mashiach, his wondrous, innovative Torah ideas, they will be the engine that will bring all of the miracles. How do we, you and I, Dax and Ruvain, Daniel and Vincent, Valeria, Moshe, all, Yael, Dara, Iti, how will we do it? And Reba, how will we do it? It's by the not only understanding Torah ideas now, when we're still in the darkness of the exile, it's by our own taking those ideas and innovating with them, applying them in our own lives, thinking about it and think how they apply to us and to the situations that we live in now. Okay, when we do that, we're actually hastening the coming of Mashiach, and the time when the whole world will be filled with divine consciousness. Now, one of the stories of the Baal Shem Tov, he had many students. We're going to tell another story at the end of the year. If there's time, please go. Let me turn off my phone. We're going to one second. Got it. We're going to tell a story about Rabbi Yechiel Michal of Zlotchev, who is one of the students, but Rabbi Yechiel of Zlotchev, the old days, there were many people that were students of the Baal Shem Tov, but the Baal Shem Tov chose only one of them. His name was Dov Bear of Mizrich, to be his protege, to be his follower. Okay, I can't.
If you're an administrator, you can mute other people.
Right, I thank you. Maybe I don't know. Reba's here. Reba, can you mute somebody? I don't know who. It just, I'm not going to let it bother me, but maybe it's bothering me.
I'm muting all the unmuted. Try not to mute you.
What? Say again?
I said I'm muting those who are not yet muted.
Okay, fine. Anyway, so who is the main student of the Baal Shem Tov? Was the Maggid of Mizrich. Okay, so the Maggid of Mizrich himself was an incredible Torah scholar. Okay, and not only an expert in the revealed part of Torah, he was an expert in the hidden part of Torah. And still he had heard about the Baal Shem Tov, and he thought he wanted to check it out, to see what type of a spiritual master he was. And so he came to the Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem Tov said to him, "Are you familiar with a particular part of Eitz Chaim?" Eitz Chaim is part of the writings of the Ariya Kadosh. We're coming back to Tzfat, the holy city of Tzfat, the great Kabbalist of Tzfat. His name was Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, and one of the distillations of his teachings is called the Eitz Chaim, the tree of life. A tree of life usually is it speaks about the visual presentation of the Sfirot, the 3 intellectual Sfirot, the 6 emotional Sfirot, and Malchut. We're going to mention all these things later. Okay, and so he asked him about a certain text from Eitz Chaim, and Rabbi Dov Bear explained it to him, and the Baal Shem Tov said, no, it's not complete. And so Dov Bear was a very proud Torah scholar, and he thought about it, and he said it over again with additional detail. Okay, and in the Baal Shem Tov said, no, it's not correct, it's not complete. And the Rabbi Dov Bear answered the Baal Shem Tov even with a tiny bit of chutzpah, a little bit of arrogance. And he said, well, if you don't think it's correct, tell me how you think it should be. And so the Baal Shem Tov took exactly the same text, and he started to learn it. But when he learned it, again, I'm not kidding. All of my friends, I'm not comparing it to myself at all, but I want to explain. When he learned it, when the Baal Shem Tov explained the same text, he didn't just explain it. He invested all of his strengths, his intellectual strengths, his emotional strength. He even his body moved, his face moved, his hands moved. He did put all of his strength into it. It's a difference between if you really care about something, if you don't care about something. When you really care about something, every part of you is involved. All those people, that here I know almost everybody here. When you care about something, you go crazy, right? The whole world can hear you when you care about something. Okay, so that's how the Baal Shem Tov learned at the end. When he was learning it, not only did the Rabbi Dov Bear understand it in a different way, even the angels, right, that were created by the Yehudim, by the unions that were being discussed in the text itself, entered the room. The room was filled with divine fire, with divine angels, until Dov Bear got scared, right? And when the Baal Shem Tov, that's he said, what you were missing, you weren't missing understanding of the text. You understood the text. You were missing was investing all of your energy into the text. Okay, and that's the first lesson, that if you're going to do something, do it right. Do it with all of your koiches, and that's going to bring the results that you want. Okay, so now let's look inside. We're in the 70th section of the book of Keter Shem Tov. So it starts off, Vayar Hashem kisar le'ois. What is that? And God saw that Moshe turned to see. Well, I'm going to read you one of it's one of the verses in connection with Moses and God meeting for the first time. And where did they meet for the first time? It was at Mount Sinai, and it was with the burning bush. Now, the burning bush is usually perceived, the pshat. You're going to hear it here in a minute. I'm going to read to you one of my favorite chumashim is this chumash. It's called the Chumash. It's printed by Kahat. Okay, and it's unique. Is in the English translation. The editor, his name is Rabbi Moshe Wisniewski, included in the English translation all of the basic commentaries. So you're not just reading the text; you're reading the text with the commentaries. And so I'm going to read. We're going to read together. I should have had it printed on the page, but we didn't. I'm going to read it. What it says. One second. Where does it start? Am I in the right place? Oh, I'm in the wrong place. One sec. One second. I'm sorry. Moses typically glide the flock far. Into the desert. Okay, here we go. So it says, here we go. The verse says, Vayar Malach Adonai Elav Belahavat Eish Mitoch Hasne Vayar Vihine Hasne Boer Ba'Eish Vasne Enenu Uchal. So what does it say in English? An angel of God appeared to Moshe in the heart of a blazing fire from the midst of a thorn bush. And the commentary says, by revealing himself in a prickly thorn bush, God intimated to Moshe that he felt the Israelites' pain and suffering. In general, the pshat, the simple explanation of the burning bush, is the union of divinity with the Jewish people. The bush was the Jewish people in prison, in Egypt, in exile, and the fire was divinity coming to save them. That's the pshat, the simple explanation, right? It says, as Moses gazed at the burning bush, he saw that the bush was on fire, but the bush was not being consumed. Moses said, now this is where our section begins. Let me turn away from what I am doing here and go over to and behold this remarkable sight. Why doesn't the bush burn? Okay, when God saw that that Moses had turned to look at the bush, he was, there's a lot of different explanations. One says that Moshe was very, very far away and God brought him there with kfitz derech. He shortened the way for him to actually come to that particular place. When God saw that he had turned aside to look, that's the verse that we're discussing, he called to him from the midst of the bush saying, Moshe, Moshe. And Moses replied, here I am. That's the context that we're beginning to study. Okay, but in what we're learning today, the Baal Shem Tov, it doesn't take that simple explanation of the burning bush reflecting the Jewish people in suffering. Okay, the bush is the Jewish people in suffering. He takes it to mean something. I look inside. It says, Vayar Hashem kisar le'ois, and God saw that Moses turned to him. And like we said, and God said to him, Moshe, Moshe. There's a special meaning of Moshe, Moshe. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, for those who are joining us now, every week I promise that I'm going to translate the text in advance into English. And I actually thought about it this week, but it's kind of a complicated text, and I don't know if it would have helped. It would have been like giving the class on a piece of paper. But those of you who can read Hebrew, I'm suggesting very much that you look at the words. Even if you can only read Hebrew letters and don't know the meaning, there's still an advantage to looking at the words and to follow with me. So it says, Ki Moshe Rabbeinu olav hashalom, right? Yareh Shema hu klipa. Moses thought that the burning bush was something evil. okay, with something evil, a bush on fire, klipa, the klipa, something that hides divinity. Okay, and I want to remind you that there's a few kind of basic concepts here. One thing is that before the giving of the Torah, which would happen a year from this, approximately a year from this date, at the giving of the Torah, something happened. We spoke about it 2 weeks ago at the class. Something unbelievable happened when God gave the Torah to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai. Until God gave the Torah to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai, divinity and materiality were separated. You couldn't join them together. It would be possible to take something and use it for divine purposes, okay? And yet you could just take it afterwards and throw it in the trash because something physical couldn't absorb spiritual power, okay? At the giving of Mount Sinai, when it says Vayard Hashem al Mount Sinai, that Moses came down on Mount Sinai, all of a sudden, all of the mechitzos, all of the separations were pushed away, obliterated, and it was possible to join physical and spiritual together. And that's actually the life that we experience. That's the life that each of us have. This idea that you can get into doing spiritual things. It becomes part of your life. You can be surrounded by artifacts, holy books, holy paintings, tables that are used for holy meals, tefillin and mezuzahs. We're surrounded by artifacts that in fact help us to connect to spiritual things. They're supposed to, that's their part of their purpose, that we can, a person can make an effort and he's supported and pushed ahead by all of the physical things around him that absorb holiness. And starting with a Sefer Torah, with a Torah scroll, okay? But before giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, you couldn't absorb physical things, material things, couldn't absorb spiritual. So when Moses saw a burning bush, he thought, wow, this is something, could be something evil. It's a klipa, right? Because it doesn't burn. It's just total negativity, fire into a lowly bush. Okay, the Shemahu klipa. That's the first line that Moses thought. He thought maybe it was a klipa. Ad she'amar Moshe Moshe, until he heard God say his name twice. We're going to, there's a few different places in the Torah where people's names are mentioned twice. Abraham's name is mentioned twice. Yaakov's name is mentioned twice. There's a Navi, there's a prophet also, his name is mentioned twice. In each of those places, it's Lashon Chiva. The reason why that the name is mentioned twice in the Torah is because God wants to show that the person was close to him, that he loved them, that he cared for them. And each of those cases, when you really love somebody, everybody think about talking to your significant other, to your spouse, right? If I'm going to say Chaya Baruch's name, I don't say Chaya Chaya. I say Chaya to get her attention, and Chaya. You say it, you pause in between. Well, you pause in between. That's showing a endearment. And in fact, all the places in the Torah where people's names, where God calls out to a person twice, there's always a pause between the two names because it's always an indication of endearment. Okay, the exception is here, and we're going to explain why. That Moses didn't want to approach the burning bush until he heard his name said twice without a pause, Moshe, Moshe. And we'll continue. Az amar hineni, and then only then did he say, Hineni, I am here. Now we're going to this. What are we talking about? He says, Ki Moshe Shmai Kol Olamas. Okay, I was going to say two things. I was going to say just another one sentence introduction that you have to remember who Moshe was. Moshe was the bridge for the Jewish people from before the giving of the Torah to the after the giving of the Torah. He was the transition. He was the one that made it happen. Okay, so Moshe was this person. He was like, in a certain sense, even though he hadn't yet met with God. This is the first, we're describing the first meeting with God. He still was on a level beyond all the world. Even though he was a shepherd, the Medrash says that he was the king of Ethiopia. He had 40 years of incredible experiences after he left Egypt, before he became the leader of the Jewish people. Nevertheless, he was all of this time on a completely different level. And so what does it say? It says that Moshe's name that was given to him because by Batya, by the daughter of Pharaoh, and Moshe from the word Meshicha, that he was taken out of the water. So, but nevertheless, Moshe understood that his name was Koil Oilamos. His name it was something beyond the world. It included all of the worlds in it, right? And therefore it bothered him, because he lived in a world where spiritual and physical couldn't connect, where spiritual and material were completely separate. He lived in a world where it was either all good, it was just all good or all bad. There wasn't any interfusing of good and bad. And so Lochem Shmo Hukshalo, since he knew that his name was included, was just like he was the bridge between spiritual and physical. His name was the bridge between spiritual and physical, and it bothered him because it didn't fit into the world that he saw with his eyes. And how do we understand it? This is the Baal Shem Tov speaking again. What's the Shekhinah? We've talked about it many times. The people that are just joining us, the Shekhinah is from the word shochein, indwelling. It's the indwelling of God in the world. Okay. Now, I don't know what world that you guys live in, but the world that I live in is mixed up. I can't read the newspaper anymore. It's so discouraging. I don't know what the rest of you do. As a Chabad Chassid, the Rebbe told us that my job is to give people Judaism. And that's what I spend all of my day giving people Judaism. But other people who have to live in the world and have to absorb all of the falsehood and the if you read the newspapers, the New York Times, other places, the Economist, there's such lies about what's going on in Eretz Yisrael, misleading people about what's going on here, about the situation here, of nothing. It's not perfect, but it's still so madness, and all of the anti-Semitism that's going on around the world, and it's a crazy world. Okay, so when we talk about the Shekhinah, don't make a mistake. The Shekhinah is not just, goody stuff. It's not the cupcakes with ice cream with Jewish, not ice cream, whipped cream. It's not cupcakes with Jewish whipped cream. The Shekhinah is everything. Right? The Shekhinah is not only all of the good, but the Shekhinah is all of the bad. It's what we experience. And I don't know if you're just taking that on a superficial basis, it's very bothersome. It's mind-blowing. What does it mean that God's revelation is good and bad? That's what he says. He says, just like where everybody have the place. Please look inside if you can. That just like the Shekhinah includes in it all of the worlds, and he's going to name the 4 different systems that exist in the physical plane. Daimim is inanimate, and Someach is plant worlds, and then it's inferred. Then Chai are animals, and Medaber are speakers, people. The Tovim V'Raim, all of the good and all of the bad. That is the Shekhinah, everything together, right? And that's what bothered Moshe. We're going to describe now how his name, in his elevated sense of consciousness, he understood that his name was included the whole gamut of spiritual reality, and the whole gamut of spiritual reality included good and bad. And it was a terrible contradiction for him. He didn't understand how good and bad could be together. And that's what he says. He says, Kach, now we're going to look at the letters of Moses' name. Kach, in such a way, Os Mem, the first letter of Moshe's name. Moshe's name has 3 letters, Mem and Shin and Hey. We're going to come back to it again. The Mem of Moshe's name, Mem Moshe, Romes Le Malchus. First of all, the word Malchus means kingship, and it starts also with the letter Mem, right? Malchus, and Malchus is kingship, that God created the world because He wants us to be to accept Him as King. That's what the world is about. That even with all of this, the distractions that there are, we have to accept God as king. And that's the letter Mem for Malchus, for kingship. And so that also goes on Shechina. In other words, God's Shefa, the indwelling of God in the world, that's Shechina, that's synonymous with the word Malchut, with the word kingship. So that was the first letter of his name. The first letter of his name has to do with this world, this physical world. Okay, so Harom is the Malchus is the Mem of Moses' name is hinting to Malchus, to kingship, to the Shechina, which Kol Hanyanim includes all of physical reality, Doimim, inanimate, Someach, plants, Chai is living, meaning animals, and Medaber is the speakers, all of it good and bad. Okay, and then what's the second letter? The second letter is Os Shin, the Moshe, from the word Moshe. Kol haruches. Now, so ruches. This is going to be over the head of some people, but I'm just going to say it, right? What are ruches? Again, we're in general, we're speaking about it. The paradigm here is the three parts of the soul and the body: nefesh, ruach, and neshama. So nefesh has to do with our involvement with motor things, with the heart beating and the kidneys filtering, right, and all the physical aspects are interfaced with physical reality. That's nefesh, and that's, in this context, is the Shechina, like we spoke about, the physical world. The second level is they called it ruchais. Ruchais means it's the second level. It's this level of so-called ruach. It has to do with emotional energy. What's the hint to emotions to shin? Okay, so if you look at the letter shin, the letter shin is like this, right? There's three yuds connected to a base, okay? And so the three, the shlosha kavim, it's called, the three different lines, the three different conduits, that's usually an inference to the primary emotions: chesed, gevur, teferes, kindness, judgment, and compassion. Okay, so that's the hint of the three. And the hey, again, we've spoken about it before, but I'm going to say it again. The four letters of God's name have to do with the way that God relates to the world. The first step in the process, the first letter of God's name is the Yud, that God contracted himself. And the second letter of God's name is the Hey, where he expanded horizontally, vertically, and the Yud is depth point. Okay, for the people who aren't familiar with the letters, next week I'm going to come with a blackboard. Right, and the third letter of God's name is the Vav, which is a Yud point and a long leg. And the fourth letter of God's name is the final Hey, which is the final, again, width, height, and depth expansion into the physical world. Now, so in Kabbalah, it speaks about that each of the letters is connected to a different attribute that God relates to the world. So the Yud is that divine point of wisdom, that flash of consciousness, okay? And the first Hey is we take it and we understand it. So Yud and Hey is connected to the flash of wisdom, and then the Hey, the expansion of the Hey with height and depth is we take that flash, that seminal idea, and we understand it. Okay, then the Vav has to do with emotions, and the final Hey into bringing into action. So, but we see that the first Hey of God's name has to do with understanding. So that's the Hey of Moses' name. That's what he says inside. I hope that was clear. And if anybody has a question, ask. Okay, but so that's the Hey of Hashem's name. Hey is the inyan from the Neshama. So again, the Neshama has to do with intellect, and that's the Hey of God's name. So Moses understood, again, in general, that his name was a contradiction in terms. It was the union of the Mem, the physical world, with the higher spiritual elements of ruchais and the shamais, of emotions and intellect of the divine. How can you have such a thing? Moses' name itself was this contradiction, and he lived in a world where he didn't see the possibility for spiritual and physical joining. That was his question. Okay, so his name drove him crazy, and in fact, I want to say that it's such an interesting thing. In other words, where was the first meeting between Moses and God? How did God invite Moses to a meeting? Because he wanted to answer his question. That was the opening of their relationship, and I think that that's so interesting, right? That God is always coming to us at our most sensitive and difficult places. You just have to listen to God talking to us, and that we'll find the answers to the things that are troubling us. Okay. Anyway, so Moses' name was bothering him, right? The Darshu Chazal. So there's a Gemara. 1 second, let me make sure where it is. Darshu Chazal. Okay. Again, what did the rabbi say? Okay. He says back inside. He says, what did the rabbi say? He says, Chazal, Menorah Shkolim HaChodesh Rosh Tevis Moshe Chulu. Okay, that we have. There's a famous Talmudic text, and the Talmudic text says that there were 3 things that Moshe didn't know the answer to. Now, by the way, there are a lot of things that Moshe didn't know the answer to. When in last week's Torah portion, when the people who were impure but didn't want to lose out to bring the Passover offering, Moses didn't know the answer, and he asked God. At the end of the 40 years, when the daughters of Tzlofchad, their father, passed away, there were only girls, and they wouldn't inherit their portion of the land, and they bothered them that they wanted to inherit their portion of the land. Actually, I have a cousin here with us, and our grandfather, Sedi Yanko, passed away on the parsha where it talks about Benot Tzlofchad. Anyway, so there's another case where Moshe did not know the answer. But that's not what it's talking about here. It's talking about there were 3 places where Moshe didn't understand God's instructions and where God had to actually explain it to him. What are the 3 things? The 3 things were the menorah, the candelabra in the Beis Hamikdash. The shkalim is the half shekel that was used to atone for the sin of the golden calf, and it was money that was used to buy certain aspects of the tabernacle. And the last thing is hachodesh, is the Moses didn't understand. It's about the chodesh is the hachodesh azelachem. This month is for you. It's the how to recognize when the new month begins. So there were 3 things. What's difficult about the menorah? The menorah was this incredibly elaborate, 2-meter tall candelabra, where there were these beautiful, intricate flowers and cups that would go up the arms of the menorah. Okay, and the whole thing had to be beaten out of one solid piece of gold. It couldn't be welded together. It had to be hammered out of one piece of gold. And Moshe could not, for the life of him, understand how it was possible to make this incredibly beautiful, intricate instrument from one thing of gold. And so he says, Zeh Maisa HaMenorah. Every place where it says Zeh, God is showing Moses, this is how you make the menorah. There are even some opinions that say that he just told Moshe to throw the gold into the fire, and it came out in the shape of a menorah, because it was impossible for him for a human being to make it. Okay, but But that was the first thing. That was the mem of Moses' name, was the menorah. The shin of Moses' name, shkolim, has to do with that the Moses couldn't understand how the half shekel was able to atone for the sin of the golden calf. And here the answer is, the Zohar says that God showed Moshe a fiery coin, a fiery half coin, right? And the inference is, how can a coin atone for a sin if that coin's on fire? If we invest in that action, in this case charity, or whatever we do, the fire of holiness that we want to change, we want to not to be the same, we want to atone for our negative deeds, we want to move forward. If we invest fire in our actions, that can be an atonement. That was the answer for the second thing. And for the third thing was about from the word, the hay of Hashem's name, the hay of Moses' name, HaChodesh, that God actually showed Moshe what the sliver, how it would look, how to identify the sliver of the moon. And by the way, the Jewish people, they compared to the moon, where the nations are compared to the sun, just like the sun is here today and gone tonight. So the nations of the world are here but disappear. Look at how many nations tried to conquer the Jewish people: the Greeks and the Romans and okay, all the different nations, right? And where are they today? Persians, right? Who else? And the Mamelukes, right? And the Ottomans. They all tried to conquer us. And where are they today? What? Gone. Like from day to night. But the Jewish people are compared to the moon, just like the moon wanes and waxes. It gets smaller and it almost disappears completely, and then it comes back to its fullness. That's the Jewish people. Okay, so those were the three secrets that Moshe learned directly from God. Okay, and that's what he says inside. I bet look, I'm begging you, I'm talking too much. What time is it? Oh my gosh. Look back inside. So that's what the rabbi said, that menorah shkolim chodesh, hachodesh, that these three things, the Rashi Tevis Moshe, the three things that bothered Moshe, okay, and that we just explained them. I hope that was clear. Okay, but the Baal Shem Tov wants to say that really, what the Talmud is telling us, it's not about the menorah and the half coin, the matzah shekel, and recognizing how the moon wanes and waxes. It was actually the Talmud is telling us that it was Moshe's name, because the three first letters of those three words are again Moshe, that it was Moshe's name that bothered him. Moses couldn't understand, since Moses, he knew he had a special purpose. He knew he was some type of a bridge, but nobody told him what he was supposed to be doing with his life. Okay, and he knew that even his name was a contradiction in terms. It was a union of physical and spiritual. It was a contradiction because he couldn't understand how good and bad could come together, right? Good and bad come together, it's he said, what's the definition of a crazy person? When you do the same thing over and over again, you think the results are going to change. Okay, that right. So here Moses, good and bad. If good and bad are together, right, then the whole world is insane. Okay, and he couldn't understand it. Okay, and that's what he says. It was his name, Mem Shin Hey, right, that really bothered him. Okay. Because his name included all the different aspects of good and bad. He himself was good and bad incarnate. And how could that possibly be? Right? This was a wonder for him. How can it be that the Shechina, that the indwelling of God, that's the true union when it includes not only the good, but the bad? And I just, again, I don't know if everybody's following, but just have to take a minute and think about it. Okay, think about that, that that we are all of us in this environment of good and bad together. And what do you do about it? What do you do about it? It's sometimes it's just and maybe afterwards I'll tell the story from Nachum Ish Gamzu. It's a very important story. We'll mention the story because it's about this also. Okay, and but how do you deal with all of the evil? I mean, it's like sometimes a person could feel that God has it in for them. Right? Everywhere they turn, they stand up, they hit their head, and they step forward, and they stub their toe, and it's just, and then their jacket gets ripped on the nail, and then it doesn't stop, right? How is it that we can deal with the evil and the good together? That's what he's asking. What's the Eich shehayichud ha'amiti hi'ashchina? If the indwelling of God, that's the true union of spiritual and physical, the Eich kolim beis hafochim b'noseh echad. How can two of these opposites be united in one thing? Second. No, I didn't even look at my notes. Let's keep going. You know what? It can't be that nobody has one question to. Well, you know what? Don't ask now. We're gonna get to the meat of it. Then let's wait till after, and we're gonna blow everybody away, and then we'll discuss it. Okay.
Rabbi, I had a question. I had a question in the chat.
Oh, I did
from earlier.
I did. You know what? I didn't look at it, but I can look at it now. 1 second. There's a Baal Shem Tov, the Mashiach. Okay. Well, okay. So Dax is asking, everybody can see the chat, okay? It says, was there a connection? Was the Baal Shem Tov? We believe that every generation has a Mashiach. Every generation has a person that it says, it says that, no, Yeshua ben Levi spent Yeshua ben Levi once met Elijah the prophet, and he begged him to take him with him wherever he would go. And there were these three amazing stories that we're not going to do today. We're not going to do it today, of that the Yeshua ben Levi experienced with the harbinger of Mashiach coming, and that is Elijah the prophet. Okay, but at the end of their experience together, but the Gemara says, Hayom lasoschem, when the Jewish people will behave properly, when the Jewish people will do exactly what we're going to be reading about in a minute here, that is when Mashiach will come. Hayom lasoschem, when we do what we're supposed to do, doesn't matter what's going on in the world, Mashiach is going to come. Okay, and so every generation has a potential Mashiach, absolutely.
Potential.
Okay, a potential Mashiach. Okay, and it's up to the Jewish people. And even I want to say, I think I even spoke about it, but a few months ago, they say that even sometimes God succors us, right? What does that mean? Something good happens. Something good happens. It says, that certain holy books were revealed, Jewish texts were revealed, certain consciousness came. People were so happy about this revelation of divinity in the darkness that they forgot about asking God that we want Mashiach now. They forgot about it, right? They stopped working hard to bring the Mashiach because they were so happy with this little bone that God sent them. Okay, it's really up to us. And we talk about all the time the Chafetz Chaim, who was not a Chassid, but he understood about Mashiach. He used to go around with a satchel of fresh clothes, because he didn't, when Mashiach would come, he wanted to be ready. Okay, there are people that live their whole lives every day asking for Mashiach to come. It depends on us. That's what, when you say the Mashiach of the generation, it's not just that is there a Mashiach of the generation, it's that the power is in our hands, nobody else's hands. And the connection between the Baal Shem Tov and David HaMelech, I want to say that it's a famous thing, that they were both passed away on Shavuos. Yeah, Shavuos, one on the first day, the other the second day. That their connection, David was the the Mashiach is going to be a descendant of the house of David, okay, and somehow we don't know about the lineage of the Baal Shem Tov, but somehow he was connected. He could have been the Mashiach in his generation. Okay, I hope that answers your question. Let us continue. I'm just going to say, if I don't get some more questions, I'm going to be upset.
So he couldn't be the Mashiach of his generation, but he was a tzaddik of his generation.
He was a tzaddik, but he was the potential tzaddik of his generation. Okay,
just like the Rebbe.
And the Rebbe actually is a descendant of King David. So there, and we hope he's going to come back soon with Tchias Amesim, and it's Hayom Lasoschem. Today, if we just do what we're supposed to do. Okay, so we're back inside. So we said, so what bothered Moshe? He bothered Moshe this juxtaposition of good and evil, and that's what he saw in the burning bush. He saw a juxtaposition of good and evil, and he couldn't understand it. Okay, he went to see what it was. Tov v'ra, good and look inside. Shahayichud amiti hu ashchina. The true union is the indwelling of God in the world. But ech kolel zbeizafochem benosecha. How can the Shechina, how can God, how can the Holocaust be God? How can the 45 people that died in Meron be God? How can the war that the Hamas, if forced, a dozen people died and forced us to shoot rockets into their neighborhoods to stop them from killing us? How can that all be the Shechina? How can it be? Okay, right? Tov v'ra, good and evil. Shein beza fakim, that they're two opposites. V'hu yichud, and that's the union. That's the question. And the most important thing is to get the question. Okay, we have to understand the question. I can't think of the word in English. I can't think of the word in Hebrew either. The dichotomy that we live in, that we experience all the time, that's so frustrating for any thinking person. Okay, and the gam kain shmoi Moshe. So this is all of this. This came out to the name Moshe. How can the name Moshe itself, which is gam kain koil akol, which included all we said, the mem is the Shechina, and the shin and the hey are the spiritual levels of ruach and neshama. How can it all be one thing? The ech naseh hayichud al yada. How can it all be a union through it? V'zeh she'amar b'shas Moshe Ravchem. I can't forget how to pronounce it. Kobustis. What's Kobustis? Kobustis is a thief. Moses is a thief, and the actual, it's a Gemara, and it says that there was a certain Roman minister, and he goes to Yochanan ben Zakkai, and he says, your Moshe is a thief. And Yochanan says, why? Because it says in the Torah, one place, that there was he was given a certain measure of gold, right? And he only gave back another, there was a different word that was used, another measure of gold. And so what happened? So in terms of the measurements in those days, what he was given was much more than he returned. Okay, so this not Jewish person said, "Oh, your Moses is a thief," right? Anyway, so Yochanan ben Zakkai explains to him that he didn't understand the terms, and it wasn't really a question. That's what the Talmud says. But it nevertheless, what happens is that the Talmud says that it says Moshe Ravchem, Moses, your teacher, is a kibustas. He was a thief. That's what the Talmud says. And the Baal Shem Tov says, how do we really understand that? That Moses was a thief? Because just like a thief, right, has good and bad things, right? He's a person, and yet he steals. So Moshe also was this combination of good and bad. Okay? That was the contradiction that Moses came to the burning bush with. So then the text continues, right? I think we're on the bottom there. We're on the, okay. Aval be'emes asi shapir. So the Baal Shem Tov is talking to each of us, right? To Doreen and to Vincent, to Reuven, Daniel. Renata's back. Renata and Dax, Reba, Yael. So many people here, Baruch Hashem, is talking to each of us. He says, don't worry. It says, it's going to all come out okay. Because the person has to understand. Well, you know what? I had so many notes here that I wanted to give over. 1 second. That a person, the problem is when we think that that good and evil are things that are supposed to exist simultaneously, right? That they both have that they're separate entities, okay? That there's good and it has power, and there's bad and it has power, and that's what's sometimes becomes so difficult for us. So the Baal Shem Tov says, no, it's not the case. That the kihara, that what are we supposed to understand? That the evil is a kisei. Kisei is a chair, but it also means a kisei, a foundation. What's a better word for kisei? It's a platform. That the ra is a platform for the good. Okay, right? Okay, now everybody just take a minute and think about it. Okay. Yeah, let the Baal Shem Tov explain it, and then we'll talk about it. He said, and it says like kamo, like it says, ufaro hikriv. At the splitting of the Red Sea, it says the Jewish people got to the edge of the Red Sea, and all of a sudden, they hear that Pharaoh is coming with 600 chariots, each one filled with armed men. Okay, and why is he coming? Because even he's coming to take the Jewish people, the slaves, his slaves, and take them back to Egypt. Okay, and the Jewish people, and there's a whole long story. There was a whole argument what were they going to do? Some people wanted to fight, some people wanted to commit suicide, some people wanted to run away. There was all these different positions. Okay, but ultimately the verse says Ufaro Hikriv. Right, that Pharaoh, the pshat is he came closer, but you can also read it Pharaoh Hikriv, that Pharaoh brought closer. He brought the Jewish people closer to God. Here was the ultimate evil, Pharaoh, the enslaver for 210 years. And what did he do? He brought the Jewish people closer to God. What does that mean? Okay, let's listen to the second thing that he says. That's the first thing. Everybody think about it. How can something negative bring me to something positive? How can evil bring me to good? He says, okay, so the first is what he's talking about is actually, what were they afraid of? They were afraid of that Pharaoh was going to swallow them up, was going to punish them, was going to make them slaves again. The same thing in our lives. We see evil and we say, "Oy, it's going to control me. I don't want to be part of the evil. I have to, when the evil comes closer to me, when God forbid I do something, I'm in a negative environment, or even if I myself do something inappropriate, okay, what's supposed to happen? I'm supposed to say, I don't want any part of this. I have to use this as a platform to bring me to something positive. That's what it means with Pharaoh Hikriv. That's the first level. I want to push back from the evil. And just take a minute, everybody, and think about it. You know, if somebody, God forbid, speaks to us inappropriately, you have choices. Either you can speak to them inappropriately, okay, or you can say, wow, you know, that's not, I don't want to be there. You know, you can say, boy, this person really has a problem. I feel bad for them, you know, and you can use that as the way, as an example for yourself, right? The first example, no, that's not, the first example is Pharaoh Hikriv. When something bad happens, I just want to not be a part of it at all. I don't want it to envelop me. I want to get away from it. I want to not be part of that evil. Just like Pharaoh Hikriv, he brought the people closer to Hashem. That's the first idea. The second idea is more sophisticated. And that's that al yedei sheroya ma'aser rashoyim, when a person sees negative actions in others, yesh lo hano, he has a certain pleasure, shehut tzaddik, that not that he's a tzaddik, that he is such a completely righteous person, but no, that's not part of me. When I see what's going on in the world, when I see what's going on by others, when I even experience my own negative aspects, my own things that are not fixed and complete yet, and I say, that is not me. That is not who I want to be. I have my vision of myself of being a person on the path to connect to Judaism, to connect to Hashem, to connect to spirituality, to reveal spirituality, right? I'm going to leave that negative in the dust. It's not where I want to go. That's what he says. He says, Sha'al Yedei Sheroya Ma'aser Rashoyim, when he sees the actions of the evil people, he has a pleasure. He has a pleasure in the sense he has that vision of who he is and where he wants to go. Shehut tzaddik, that's there, not my place. My place is with good. The yesh lo hano v'tainug, that in other words, the evil pushes him to a place of divinity, right? Either because the evil itself, you're afraid it's going to envelop you and you want to escape from it, or the evil itself brings you to a place of consciousness. It's not enough for me to speak about it. Everybody has to talk about it. To think about it themselves. I think I don't know how many times it happens to each of us on a daily basis. Exactly that this concept. What does it mean? That evil is a catapult to get us into good. It's a kisei. That Ra is a kisei, is the platform for good. It's the jumping off point for good. That's what anything negative is supposed to be. Everybody take a minute, please. Think about something negative, okay? Just 1 second, let me close my door.
Shaul, is that not the idea of Yisro or Min HaChoshech, no? Or Bali Tshuva, or such a things? That evil is not good, but it can bring to a greater good.
So it's Yisro or Min HaChoshech. Okay, that absolutely. But, the Baal Shem Tov, actually, the Baal Shem Tov brings the idea of Yisro or Min HaChoshech other places. The idea here is simply to use the evil as a pivot point, as a platform to bring good. Okay, and whether it's an argument with a friend, okay, or a failure, God forbid, but a person has a failure, had a certain challenge in their life, and they didn't come up to their expectations. They could completely not come up to their expectations. It could be a tragic failure, okay, okay, and the whole gamut of reality. What's the Baal Shem Tov saying? That if we let ourselves become absorbed in the evil, preoccupied by the evil, we are giving the evil a life force. It's when we say, no, your only purpose is to push me to good, even, God forbid, my own tragic failure. Even that is only for one purpose, that I should come to a level of good. Okay, and that the evil, sometimes, again, I would, say it out. Sometimes the negative things that happen around us, it's not just us; it affects other people. So everybody makes mistakes. There's nobody that makes mistakes. Okay, and does that mean that you're supposed to just it happened, and I'm going to do good? No, a person has to sometimes experience regret and do tshuva and fix the negative things. Okay, but ultimately they have to understand that the evil was there to push them to where they have to go. Okay, and that I think all of us, that's the engine for our lives to get to where we have to go. What did God give us as the engine, as the empowerment to move to a completely different space? It's when we see the negative around us as the platform for good. And let's just go back inside, okay? And so he talked about that it's you pushing back from the evil. That's one level, and then separating ourselves from the evil that we don't see. We are positive actions that result from seeing the negative actions of others, or even from ourselves. Gives us clarity. That's a second level. And he brings even a third level. Yesh lo no, v'nasalo. Okay. The second level, he says he has pleasure, that he is capable of acting in a positive way. Shu tzaddik. V'yesh lo no v'tainug, and being moving in the right direction gives him pleasure, and that gives God pleasure also. The nas is all the worlds experience that pleasure al yedei hara, from that evil. Okay, we're putting the evil in its place. Evil has no existence on its own. It's only a platform to bring us to good. 1 second. One second. Okay. Ukimat. He's going to bring a third example in a minute. Ukimat, and he says kimat al yedei said that through this, yesh ra aliyah gamken. Even the evil then has an aliyah. But what does that mean? The evil that again, I just discussed evil before. War is evil, and death, unnecessary death, is evil, and what's going on in the world in terms of Jewish people are being singled out and persecuted are evil. Okay, all these things are evil. When what does it mean that these negative things, when we use them as a platform to do good, to transform ourselves, to reach our goal, how can it say that Baal Shem Tov say that the evil has an elevation? Again, it's one thing when you're talking about eating an apple. There it is, an apple, and I eat that apple. I don't eat the apple because I push it to want something sweet after I had my corned beef sandwich, and I want to eat. No, I'm eating the apple. I make the blessing on the apple because I want to have strength to serve Hashem. Okay, and so when I make that blessing on the apple and to have strength to serve a God, the spiritual identity of the apple, what we call the nitzutz eloki, the divine spark that's in the apple, I separate it from the apple, right? And it's able to go back to its source in heaven. I've transformed a little bit of material reality, klipas noga, the shining klipa, and I've transformed it into something good. Okay, but what about evil? How can you say that about evil? Evil is evil. And the answer is that even in evil, there's a spark. Even in evil, there's a spark. And that when I use it as a platform to do good, I elevate that evil. It says kimat, almost. Kimat means almost. Almost al yedei hara aliyah gamkin, that the evil has an elevation also. Rakshik she'olam misham. Only thing that there's a difference. Yispar the kol poli oven. It's just like it says that all the evildoers will be separated. What happens is the spark is elevated, but all of the rest, the negative aspects of the thing, fall back into the world. Okay, that when we use the evil or the negative things or our negative qualities or negative events or the most tragic things that happened to us, and helping others also to see it that way, that the reason why it happened when God said something negative to a person is because they have the strength and the ability to take that thing and to make it from negative as a platform to do good with it. That's why God sent it to them, to take that spark even out of the evil, the most disgusting and grub and terrible things. We have the ability to elevate them, that the spark comes up and all the rest is gone away. And that's what happens to the person. If you actually can do that, then we can take the good out of that negative experience and all of the bad things fall away. And I know it's not easy. All of my friends, it's not easy. We're talking about walking away from a trauma and just flying with it. And of course it's not easy. But the only way to get there is by thinking about it and by looking at it that way. That God sent me a difficult experience because I can take it and I can take the spark out of it and I can use it as a platform for good. That's what he says. It's part of the kopay of it. And the same thing even on the most subtle level, of a machshava ra, even of a negative thought. A negative thought, a person, how many times a day, you're all righteous people, all of you. I'm not so righteous. I have a lot of times negative thoughts, okay? And even a negative thought, even that is a kisei, a derech hanal. It's also a platform, a chair, a platform, that's the right word, to transform it to good, to push us into positive thoughts on the two ways that we spoke about it before. Either, I don't want any part of it, or to know that that's not me, and that I'm much more than that. I'm not a part of the evil. I'm part of the good, and that's what the evil comes, is to remind me of that. Now, after all of that, we're going to go back to the text of the burning bush. Okay, please, everybody who can read Hebrew, look inside the Zeo, and this is what it says. Amar Moshe. So when God said to Moshe the first time, Moshe, he didn't say Hineni. He didn't say I'm here. It was only when God said to Moshe, Moshe twice, without any break in between them. And that was the buzzword. That was the revelation for Moshe. That was God reading Moses' soul, like God does for each of us all the time. God is reading our souls. God read Moses' soul, and he said, Moshe, without any break, he said, Moshe the good and Moshe the bad. Or Moshe the bad, or Moshe the with aspects of bad. Moshe is the whole world. The mem for Malchus, for Shechina, and the shin and the hay for Ruach and Neshama. That it's all one thing. And yet, how can it be one thing? When we use the evil as a platform for good. Okay. Moses didn't say I'm here when he heard the first Moshe, because it wasn't God calling him. It was God answering his question. How do I live with evil and good together? Right? How can there be a union of good and bad in a world? How can it be mixed up good and bad in the world? How can it be? When he saw that the burning bush, right, of there was good and evil. The snare was this, again, we said before that the snare, usually the way the snare is understood is the burning, the bush is going on the Jewish people, and the fire was God helping them. But in this context, Moses saw the burning bush as the physical world, the lowly world, the snare, Medrega Tachtoina, the lowest level of physical reality, material, gross material reality. Niftachu kolam akoros al yonis, all of the heavenly sources were opened up. Ad lamata were open and brought down. Umayta lo yivarse, and that's the fire coming down. And why didn't it burn? Right? Why didn't the world burn up with the fire? Why? That it should be consumed, consumed, and burned up of all the evil. Hey, when he said, again, he says, that was his question. How come the sneh didn't burn? How can you have good and evil together? And that's when he said, Moshe, that Moses knew that the evil, which is referred to by the bush, right, it is supposed to be the platform for the holiness. It's the one. It's the holiness can literally stand on the bush, can stand on the evil, and catapults us to the level that each of us knows that we can reach down inside. Yichud becomes a union, v'chibur, and a connection, v'kishur. No, yichud is somebody again is washing the dishes. Yichud, a union, v'chibur, and chibur from the word chaver, joining, the kishur. No, joining is a connecting, and kishur is a joining of madrega tachtoina, of the lowest level with the highest level. And when he understood all of that from God saying his name, Moshe, Moshe, he said, then he said, Hineni. And then he said, I am here. And that was the first meeting of God and Moshe. where Moshe answered, where God answered from Moshe his deepest question. And that was when Moshe became the greatest prophet that ever was and the greatest leader that there ever will be. Right? And he took the Jewish people from exile to the land of Israel. He took the people from before the Torah to after the Torah. Okay, and the same thing. All of us just have to listen, because we're after the giving of the Torah, right? And God is always speaking to all of us. And if we just listen carefully, we can see that God is answering our most intimate questions, right? And giving us the power to use the negative around us, that understand that it doesn't have an existence of its own, but it's just a platform for the good that we're going to bring from it. Okay, that's the Torah.
Question.
Okay, wait. Let me. Who was that? Moshe. Who was that? Who asked the question?
That was Ruvain.
Reuven. Oh, okay. So, go ahead. I want to say it's so late, and I people who are on a tight schedule, I apologize, but I still want to tell one more story. But go ahead, go for it, Reuven.
Quick question. Question is, what is the Baal Shem Tov talking about when he says Moshe had it all in it? What bad is he talking about?
Absolutely.
What ra is he talking about?
No. Okay. So he said it's I understood it in two different. Of course, that's a very important question. Okay, and there's two different levels to understand it. Okay, there's one. First of all, look at the milieu that Moshe came from. He saw his children, his own nation being killed. Even though they stopped killing the children when Moshe was born, but still, Moses experienced decades of tragic killing slavery of the Jewish people underneath him. So he experienced evil. He was traumatized by it. Traumatized to the point he had to run away from it, Reuven, okay? Moshe had his traumas. Like every person has their traumas. Some people more, some people less, okay? He in the 40 years that he was between when he left Egypt and when he came back to Egypt, he had all these experiences. He also saw positive things and negative things. Okay, so of course I didn't find any source, even in the smallest intimating, that's talking about the negativity in Moshe. Moshe was a prophet. His soul was the highest soul then, perhaps of all. Lo kam navi k'Moshe. A prophet there'll never be a prophet like Moshe. In that sense, spiritually, he had everything in him. Do you hear what I'm saying? Sometimes the biggest tzaddik, right? What makes him so special is he understands where everybody else is coming from. He can see into their souls. He understands it. I was talking to one of the staff at the center, talking about a psychologist and what the psychologist has to, if a psychologist doesn't have a psychologist that they can go to and they can talk about their own issues, and they go crazy, okay? Because a psychologist spends their whole day looking into other people's problems and trying to help them. Okay, so they live in that place. That was Moshe. Moshe was the greatest prophet that ever was, and this is the beginning of God taking him and showing him how to really help the Jewish people by taking evil and turning it into a platform for good. Did I answer your question?
Yes, Shakayach.
Okay. Anybody else? And there's a story I was going to say. I'm not, God forbid, I'm not bragging, but I became observant. I've said it many times when I was in my 20s, 22 or 23. And I was just becoming Shomer Shabbos, and my grandfather passed away. My grandfather on my mother's side was a kept Shabbos, and he wasn't a wealthy person, but he had a small library. And since I was only one of 3 people in the family that kept Shabbos at that time, So all of his books were divided up between the three of us, and I could barely read Hebrew at that time. But in one of the books, I just discovered that it said that our family was descended from a person, particularly one of the students of the Baal Shem Tov, and that was like God talking to me. That was an experience of God talking to me. That gave me the strength to become really an observant Jewish person, right? And who was that person? That was Rabbi Michael of Zlotchev. Michael of Zlotchev was one of the students of the Baal Shem Tov, and there's a story about him, and it's exactly what we talked about today. And it's a very long story, but I'm not going to tell it for so long because it's late. And anybody who wants to go, I will not be insulted at all. Okay, if you want to go. But the story is that there was a simple Jew, and he had to make a living for his family, and he had an old horse and an old wagon, and he would make deliveries and buy things and sell things, and he had a chance to make a little bit of extra money, and he knew he was cutting it short to get home for Shabbos, okay, but he did it because the family needed his help, you know, and then he's whipping the horse to get back to town on time, and whatever the wheel falls off, or they lost their way, or one thing or another, and they get back to town after Shabbos. And he was shattered because it never happened to him before, that such a thing, that he should actually desecrate the Shabbos. Okay, and so he went to the Rav of the town, and the Rav of the town saw how he was heartbroken, and of course discussed with him that to take precautions, that it shouldn't happen again. And the Rav thought it really was sincere, and he wasn't going to let it happen again because it was really broken. And so he said to him, you know what? The man kept begging him, give me a tikkun, give me a way to repair the damage that I did. And the Rav said, if you'll bring a liter, a quart of candles to the synagogue for Shabbos, that'll be your tikkun. And the man was so happy, and he thanked the Rav so much, and he right away went out and bought the candles. And Friday afternoon, he went into the shul with the candles. Now, again, candles today are made from paraffin. Candles in those times were made from animal fat. Right? When they burned the candle, it smelled like a barbecue. Okay, and anyway, so he lights up the candles, and there was a certain scholar, this Rabbi Yechiel Michal, that he lived in this particular town, and he would study in the synagogue all day. And there's a million stories about Rabbi Michal. There's lots of, we're not going to tell the stories now, but he was a very holy person, but he hid it from people. Nobody knew who he really was. And he sees this the wagon driver bringing in all these candles and putting them all over the shul, that there should be light in because what was the idea of the candles? Like, he desecrated the Shabbos, he darkened the Shabbos, so he has to lighten the Shabbos up by bringing candles to the synagogue. Okay, and so the Rabbi Michal asks the wagon driver, the simple Jew, what are you doing? What's going on? Very, very nice. He says, oh, I desecrated the Shabbos. My wagon broke. I got in late. I felt so terrible. But the Rav said I can do a tikkun. I can repair the damage, the spiritual damage I did by bringing candles. And the truth was that Rabbi Michal didn't say anything, but he thought, that's ridiculous. That's what this person is to repair. No, you have to make him fast. And you have to make him go into exile, and you have to make him give massive amounts of charity. He has to really suffer to fix that damage that he did. All right, but he didn't say anything to the person. But nevertheless, just as Shabbos came, just before Shabbos came, just before all the people came to the synagogue, a massive, very scary dog runs into the shul and eats up all the candles. And the guy, the Jew, is watching this, the simple Jew, and he's, oh my gosh, he says, God is not accepting my tshuva. And he runs to the rabbi, and he said, I can't, look, a dog came and ate up all the candles. It means God's not accepting my tshuva. And the rabbi said, no, it's just coincidence. Don't worry about it. And he saw how broken he was. He says, next week, just bring some more candles. I'm sure it'll be okay. The next week, he brought candles, and Rabbi Michal was there in the shul. And this time, just before Shabbos, a big wind came and blew out all the candles. And the guy goes back to the Rav, and I can't believe it. He was crying. He says, God's not accepting. No, the rabbi said, no, come on. I don't understand what's going on, but you I'm telling you, it's okay. Bring to the next week candles again. He brought candles again, right? And just before Shabbos, not a dog this time, and not a big wind, but all of a sudden, you know how it sometimes happens with some candles, it's such a weird thing that the candle burns straight down, like 10 times as fast as any other candle. Well, that all of the candles just burned out before Shabbos came in. Okay, so this time he went back to the Rav and he told him again what had happened. The Rav understood there's something going on here, and the Rav said he thinks it actually has to do with Rabbi Michal, who's learning there in the shul. And he says, please go, and he gave him a note to take to the Baal Shem Tov, who lived not far away, okay? And he got there, and he gave him the note, and in the note they said the Baal Shem Tov, the Rav said that there's a problem here, and maybe it's the kapeda, the negative attitude of Rabbi Yechiel Michal, of his student, okay? And the Baal Shem Tov told the simple Jews, you know what, you're the rabbi is right, you're doing things completely right. Next time, next Shabbos, just bring more candles and it'll be fine. And so the Jew was very happy and he went back to the town. But he said, but do me a favor, the Baal Shem Tov asked the simple Jew, please give a note to my student who learned there in the shul. So that was already, he went to him on a Sunday, and he got there back to the town also Sunday evening, and he gives the note to Rabbi Michal. Okay, so Rabbi Michal, says the Baal Shem Tov, he got scared. Why does the Baal Shem Tov want to see me? Okay, but he said, it's even though it's a close distance, he says he wants me to come for next Shabbos. I'm going to leave now. So he got packed up, and on Monday, he left because it was a short drive. It was a drive of a few hours just to get from the town where he was to Mezabuz, to the town of the Baal Shem Tov. And anyway, he gets there, and all of a sudden, the horses take off in the wrong direction, right? And they get lost in the forest for 1 day, 2 days, right? But it's only Monday, Tuesday. It's Tuesday, okay? And he says, "There's still time for me to get there before Shabbos," okay? And anyway, he Wednesday and Thursday again. All these weird things happen, blah blah blah. Over and over and over again. Instead of a few hours, it takes him 5 days, and still it's Erev Shabbos. It's the eve of Shabbos, and he's still miles and miles from Mezabuz, and he's telling the wagon driver, "Mama, get those horses going," and the wagon is whipping the horses, and then the wheel falls off, and then the axle breaks, and they fix it, and they're in the middle of nowhere, and it's not possible. It would be life-threatening to stay in the fields, and so here it is. Rabbi Yechiel Michal says, "I'm about to be machal the Shabbos," and he starts crying. Right, he's a big tzaddik, and then all of a sudden, he couldn't believe it. They're just outside of the town, and the sun hasn't set yet, right? And he gets into town just enough time to get off the wagon and to stumble into the study hall of the Baal Shem Tov. And before he could say a word, the Baal Shem Tov said to him, "Rabbi Yechiel Michal, I saved you from being Machal Shabbos, just so you could feel the panic and the anguish and the sadness of what the other Jew felt when he was Machal Shabbos." And from then on, it says the Rabbi Yechiel Michal took on himself, instead of to see people in a negative way, to judge them in a positive way. Okay, that he used the evil as a platform for the good. That's it for today. Okay. Any questions? Renata, not a word today. What's going on? And Dara, are you sleeping? What?
I'm listening to every word.
What about?
Every word.
I really like that story. It's really, really inspiring. It's really good. Thank you.
Okay, Baruch Hashem. Okay, should be everybody. That's the mission for the week. Parsha Shlach. It's the same thing. Moses sent the 12 spies into the evil, and they didn't understand that their purpose was to take the evil and use it as a platform for the good. Instead, they freaked out from seeing the the Canaanites. Okay, our job this week is everybody has to pick one thing and make sure this negative thing, this thing that's even a trauma, this thing that even seems so hopeless, we have to take it and transform it into something positive. Okay, and therefore we're even taking that negative thing and making it into something good, and that gives God pleasure. Okay, Shavua Tov, everybody. Thank you very much for coming.
Shavua Tov.
Bye bye.
Shabbat
Bye.
tov.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you
Now,
very
can
much.
you see